when she was younger, she did all kinds of different things. Hey!
Look at this. We got Crystal and Terra in the house together.
I'm so excited.
It's great to see you.
It's great to see you too.
I love how your whole background, just like your aesthetic, is all very, very matched, like
people really like this. And I would love to say that I got it from some like really eccentric place. It is from Pottery Barn. So
yay, whatever, right? No local artisans.
Yep.
The power of brand, Crystal. So you gotta.
It gotcha.
Well,
I was just looking at their outdoor furniture. It's lovely.
We'll look at this. You see you have friendly faces on the opposite side of the conversation today.
Yes,
that's good.
And I think the two of you know your way around a panel discussion. So this is going to be a lot of fun here. So.
Crystal's so much more on it than I am. So I'm going to be taking copious notes on like what I need to be doing.
Stop it.
Well, that's the whole goal of the show, is have ideas that you guys can borrow from each other and pass on to anyone that tunes in and listens. So we're excited to have you both part of the matchup here. Welcome to the marketing matchup. With me today, two of my faves in the industry, some bright, intelligent, sharp, excitable marketers. I love it. Terra McBride is the Chief Marketing Officer at Prime Capital Financial, headquartered out of Kansas City. And we got Crystal Mathis, is the CMO over at SignatureFD in Atlanta. Crystal, Terra, thank you so much for joining the show. We're super excited for this conversation today.
Thank you.
Us too. Thank you for inviting us.
And like I tell anyone, this is a conversation amongst marketing friends. We're going to cover a lot of ground. I'll bounce around a little bit, so hang with me. We'll have a good chat here. So let's start us off. So I want to know what's on your mind from a marketing perspective. What's in focus for you and your firms in 2025? Crystal, take us away. Like, set the table for us. What are your priorities? What are you focusing on in 2025 with your marketing?
Yeah. Right now, I'm in an exciting year. So I really do love to build. It's sort of in my DNA. And it's something I've just recently come to terms with, is like, I get bored if that's not what I'm doing. And I've been with SignatureFD for 6 years now. We have spent the last 5 years really building the foundation and testing and learning and getting an understanding of what it means to build an inbound lead engine for scale, because that's still relatively new to this industry. And so right now, what my focus is, what I'm digging really heavily into, is data. I am testing what is working, what is not working daily. In Google Analytics, open rates, qualified lead flow. I'm testing all of that all the time. And so that's what's on my mind right now, is how do we take the data of what's happening, not just from a lead perspective, but a content perspective too. Because at the end of the day, fundamentally what I am is a storyteller. That's what we're doing. We're just telling stories. And so I'm also measuring, what is the sentiment? How is that resonating? Is what we're saying, mattering to people? And so I'm knee deep in data land right now.
Well, let's hold that thought on data for a second, because I am going to come back around to that. But let's hear from Terra. So Terra, what's on your plate? What are you focusing on? Where is Prime diving in on marketing this year?
Yeah, it's not too different from what Crystal's focusing on. I've been at Prime Capital, be 5 years this coming May, so very similar trajectory as Crystal. And we have been also building foundations and testing things out. And really, our growth has been just off the charts. Our CEO was just in the news recently talking about our growth, both inorganically and organically. And our team is really focused in 2025 on the same kind of thing that Krista was describing, this sort of intake system for opportunities, qualifying those opportunities as marketing qualified leads, sales qualified leads, getting them booked into appointments, having that sort of central enterprise level resource where we're helping with that organic growth for our advisors. Not to say that our advisors aren't also working hard on organic growth. I mean, they're hosting events and also doing outreach and creating content and have referral programs, which are also a critical part of organic growth. And so the enterprise team's responsibility is to make sure that we're doing our part in setting up the systems that help them to be successful. So again, same as Crystal, we're doing a lot of testing. We are taking a look at, does this subject line get more opens than this one? How many emojis need to be in the subject line? What word do we need to swap in an ad to get more eyeballs on it? So it's a lot. I always say to people that marketing used to be this very squishy thing that, you know, you put up a billboard or you put an ad in the paper and maybe you get a few more people that month that walk through your door and you can say, yay, marketing did it. It's not like that so much anymore. Even on traditional platforms, you're seeing people trying to get the users that are interacting with them onto a digital platform so that they have them in their database and can start to nurture them through the funnel. So everything is about data. Everything is about getting, nurturing people through the process. The sales cycle in financial services is so long. So making sure that we're telling the story and telling it consistently and that we're the ones in front of people so that when they make it to the decision phase, we're the ones that pop up for them is really a big part of what we're doing.
Well, you hit on something that's really interesting for marketers. You think about anytime you're trying to get to that end goal, you know, which is obviously you're trying to support sales and help bring in new business. And you talk about the length of the sales cycle. You have to work backwards from there in terms of all the different things you have to do. And, you know, one of the things that I want to ask you, Crystal, is that when you think about that process and that customer journey, how people come on board, from what I read in your notes, it seems like the process has shifted where you're not just waiting for the traditional referrals and COIs to hand over, but you're trying to, you know, turn the tide a little bit, bring them in. How is your energy divided right now in terms of supporting what I'll call the traditional referrals that come on board, as well as versus the outbound, the cultivating leads and opportunities? Tell us a little bit about how you're tackling that as part of your bigger marketing efforts.
Yeah, I do believe so. Terra, I think you and I actually share a similar sentiment on this around there should be an inbound at top of funnel, but you also need to have that community focused events at the bottom. And so what we are actually working on right now is a strategy that is activating top, middle, and bottom of funnel. So that you are able to bring them in the top at the biggest scope, right? But at the same time, you are able to start closing the rate at which they close. You're able to decrease the close rate by getting these advisors in front of those people who've already been nurtured, who've already been qualified using some sort of data or enrichment process. And now we're just getting them in front of you to actually close the deal. So I do believe that you need to have an integrated marketing strategy that is hitting top, middle, and bottom, and nothing is one and done. Everything should be rinse and repeat. I like to use a hub and spoke model. So every piece of content that we are doing gets rinsed and repeat across that hub and spoke multiple times over.
Crystal, I love it. You can help sell for our agency. We preach that all the time. We want people to integrate, repeat. That's awesome. I think more than ever, marketing's fragmented, and you can't count on your audience hearing you the first time. So it's okay to repeat yourself in that situation. So Terra, when you think about some of the things that, and I know you and Crystal are on the same page with a lot of your efforts, but when Glenn was outlining the doubling down on digital marketing, and he's putting that in boldface in the press, did you squirm? You're like, oh my gosh, there's more pressure now because our CEO said we're doing this. Like,
No.
What are you doing to execute on that?
No. So the great thing is that it's not just me. It's myself. It's our chief growth officer. It's our chief investment officer. It's our new president of retirement wealth. It's our CFO. We are all coming together. And they are very smart people, right? So all of us are coming together to talk about what our roles are, our responsibilities, who owns what. There's going to be crossover, of course. But we are hyper focused on this all of us across the leadership team, it's the number one thing that we are all focused on is organic growth. So I'm not squeamish about it. I have a lot of history of working very closely with what I would call quote unquote sales counterparts. The people who are sort of in charge of that sales process and making sure that they, when marketing sort of passes off, quote unquote, passes off a qualified lead from MQL to SQL, that they have all the tools and resources that they need, and that we understand that flow is going to be seamless. And so I think exactly what Crystal said is that it has to be integrated. We all have to be communicating with each other. When marketing, quote unquote, hands off that opportunity to an SQL owner, we're not out of it. I will often talk about this sort of feedback loop and how important it is for marketing to hear from our counterparts who are handling these opportunities. What is it that you need to tell a clearer story, to be more impactful, to get people to that decision phase faster? That's what we're here to help with, is to generate that content. So I think it's really exciting because I think for the last several years, marketing, the storytelling, the funnel has been owned almost primarily by marketing. And when people were coming out of the bottom and hitting, an advisor's calendar, it was a little bit too soon. They should have been getting more information or being nurtured a little bit more. And I think that what we've learned over the last few years is that we need to do more in terms of content and storytelling and helping them get to the point so that when they are booking an appointment, they are pretty much ready to make that decision. And I always say that when our advisors sit down in front of somebody, the deal's done. Like once
Absolutely.
they talk to our advisors, they're so good at what they do. They're so good at making a connection with people that it's game over. So we just need to get people on those calendars, booking those appointments and showing up. That's where our job is. And so I'm excited because it's this whole team effort now, and everybody having a kind of a touch on that funnel to help with the process.
Terra, you covered a lot of ground. Go ahead, Chris. I want to see your reaction. She covered a lot of ground.
It's really coincidental. I was having a conversation with my husband like a couple of days ago, and we were talking about careers. And I just looked at him and I said, I really love what I do, because it's a really, really awesome time in our industry because people are taking marketing really seriously. They're starting to see how it can work if you treat it as an integrated growth system versus an adjunct thing to add into the end. And so I'm with Terra. Like, I sit on the senior leadership team. Our conversations are all around organic growth. That is all we are talking about as an entire team. It is not just me doing this. It is everyone. And it's just like there is so much to do and learn and start getting out there and telling a story in a really interesting way that it's just an exciting time right now. So it doesn't make me squeamish at all.
Well, no. I gotta tell you, and I think we actually talked about this. We were sitting around before a panel discussion we had many months ago. The idea that something triggered in the RIA and wealth management market around the pandemic, where firms decided to grow up and make marketing a C-level commitment, right?
Yep.
And Terra, your example in your last comment was fantastic, talking about how you're aligned shoulder to shoulder with the chief investment officer, the CEO, chief growth officer. Your seat is at the table. You're now in the C-level discussion, making the decisions, and everyone's going to be on the same page, which is fundamentally something that's so important to highlight. Both of you represent, at least from what I can tell, the first ever named chief marketing officer of your firms, right? You might have had marketing people, but that's a perfect example where sometime since the pandemic, they decided to give someone that title and empower them and put them in charge of the process. What does that mean? Like, you think about what it sets the stage for. Like, for you all, marketing is now C-level. You have a chance to be empowered. What do you do next with that power? Like, where do you see the impact from marketing happening? And obviously, Terra, I think you hinted at a little bit in terms of getting closer and closer to sales. But, Chris, to react to that, like, now that you have the seat at the table, where do you see marketing pushing? How does it impact an organization? What's your take on that?
I gotta say, I don't even think I realized that until you said it. I was like, I think I am actually. I think I am. And then I felt just a lot of immense dope pride, if I'm being honest with you. That's pretty dope.
Groundbreaker.
Woohoo.
Yeah.
But no, in all seriousness, it does mean that the company, the organization is taking marketing seriously as an investment. And I think that's something that sometimes is lost a little bit in the conversation. Marketing works with sales. Marketing is not sales. And there needs to be more of a conversation around there. It's not transactional. You're just telling a story. It's a relationship that you're building. And then sales comes in to close that relationship. And so having a different conversation at that level of the table with the CEO who I report to, it demonstrates that organizations are now taking it really seriously as the next wave of how we grow what this industry looks like. And that's such an exciting time.
You know, and Terra, I'm going to ask you to react to this one thing that Crystal just said. She talked about marketing helping form relationships.
Yeah.
Marketing is in that, react to this. So it's creating relationships where there might not have been one to go alongside what had been the only really reliable channel, which was the relationships of happy clients.
Yeah.
And so you almost create, not to say it's a synthetic referral, but in some ways that's what it's doing. So how do you mirror image in your marketing the best core principles of that happy client referral, someone an awesome experience? Everyone loves that. An advisor says, yeah, I did work for so-and-so, and then she told her brother and he came in, he was all ready to sign up, right? Everyone loves that. But how do you bring that relationship vibe that Crystal was talking about, that from the referral end of things, into marketing? What else can you do?
Well, I think that Crystal nailed it, where it's all about storytelling. And so we have this advisor development program where our newer advisors are part of a cohort where they're going through, I think it's like a 9-month long program, and they're focusing on lots of different aspects of their business, one of which is marketing. And so I get to spend time with each of those advisors. We typically will schedule an hour together where we're talking about, their go-to market strategy, what their value proposition is, their elevator pitch, all these kind of like heady topics that what I have found is many advisors that I work with really struggle with that because they are more analytically minded or just have never had to do that kind of self-reflection before. And I've warned them, hey, this seems like the easiest stuff because it's marketing, right? A lot of people say marketing's pretty easy, like kind of put it on the back burner. They haven't really paid attention to it. And I warn them that this is the hardest stuff because when you're talking about yourself and your value proposition and kind of doing that self-reflection, it takes a little bit of work and you might be surprised by it. And so typically those conversations really center around what I call origin stories. I always joke, like, lay down on my couch and I'm going to ask you some questions about your relationship with your mother. Not really, but it does start off with, what was your relationship with money like when you were growing up? What did you think about when money was a topic that came up? Like, how did it make you feel? And the stories that come out of that are so authentic and really get to the heart of the purpose for these people. Why do they do what they do? And to me, that's where they make connections with other people, with the average investor, knowing that a financial advisor didn't just like pop out of the womb knowing about Sharpe ratios and alpha and whatever. I mean, I think it's really important for people to understand that there's a history to this person, and that helps them connect with their clients. And so taking those stories and in some way translating them to the corporate level, that enterprise level, where we're talking about the challenges that the average investor has, or even high net worth or ultra high net worth people, they need to hear that somebody understands that they have challenges, what those challenges are and how we solve for them. And they need it done in a very human kind of way. It's a very emotional business. because, we talked about this is a relationship business. There's a lot of emotion wrapped up in our finances. I think about how hard I've worked and my husband has worked. The days that we don't want to get up and grind it out, we do it and we sock away our money. Who gets the right to manage that money, right? All of that work, all of that time, all of the blood, sweat, and tears that went into that, who gets that right? I need to tell the story in a way that speaks to somebody handing over everything that they have earned to somebody they need to trust, right? So that's kind of where I go with it, that we need to have this sort of authenticity, human touch. And I'm sure you're going to get into some AI, but I am like very much an advocate of like this human feeling, authentic stories to really make connections with people.
Well said, my friend.
Right? Sometimes we're great at it.
Said, my friend. I like what a clap. I don't know.
Terra, you could tell that you were the psychology major in this conversation. And you could tell that Crystal was the one that studied PR and comms, because the storytelling comes through. And I think there's an intersection point, right?
Oh, for sure.
And I think people who tell on the sales front, what helps them sell is helping people move to emotion. On a raw level, might be greed or fear, or maybe it's dreaming, right? And so, Crystal, like, what is your firm doing to catalyze that storytelling? What are you doing to harvest more ideas, whether it's from content or external, when Heather or other executives are on stage? Like, what are you doing to bring that forward in your marketing?
Yeah. So we're actually doing it in a few different ways. From the top down, we have a strategic formula that we use for content. It's timely event plus pain point plus life inflection point. So what that might look like is, if I'm a female executive, a life point might be that I just had kids, and so I need to plan for them. A timely event that's happening in a narrative that's already happening in the industry could be, the wage gap, and I get paid notoriously less, right? And so how do we activate wealth to mitigate against that? And then so it's timely event plus life inflection event plus pain point. And so pain point could be dealing with that timeliness of having the wage gap. And I just got a new job, and now I've got this benefits package, and how do I leverage that to what I need to do? So we use that formula across every piece of content that we do, whether we're pitching media relations, our ad content, our LinkedIn content. We have a programming series called Pillar Talks, which then starts to get people into our brand language of grow, protect, give, and live. With that, we have a monthly content series that our CEO writes that is aiming people to have better conversations around their wealth and ask better questions. And so we're starting to become a partner in the journey of what it looks like to have good conversations around your wealth, whether that's with your spouse or your kids or your business partner or your boss, asking better questions. And then the idea is that if we're partners in that journey, then maybe when you start to have an inflection point that gets you to question whether now is the time to hire a person for the first time, a wealth advisor for the first time, or change a wealth advisor, you think of us. And then you need to have things that are telling stories that reinforce the trust that you are building at that top of funnel. So we have taken advantage of the SEC's clearance of us using testimonials. But even with that, we are putting them back into our brand vernacular. So instead of calling them testimonials, we call them net worthwhile moments, because that is ultimately our brand promise. So we are enabling ourselves to allow our clients to give that power of that, to your point, the power of the referral from one to many, just through some quick quotes that say, SignatureFD was a partner for me. And so we're sort of top down telling that story of, here's how you talk about your wealth better. Here's how you ask better questions around your wealth. Maybe we don't end up being the partner you choose, but ultimately we've still helped and impacted some people with some great advice. And hopefully at the end of it, we get to partner with them as a result.
I love that structure. That is so great that everything just kind of goes back to those pillars. I think that's so phenomenal.
Yeah.
That's
It's been awesome. It's just, that's why I say it's such an exciting time. It really is.
Well, it's interesting, both of you, and being, like I said, the first C-level people in the marketing function, you have a chance to really set the stage for marketing,
Yes.
like growing marketing that makes sense in a modern way, right? And also connecting to what's next. And in the vibe of what can we tell people that might listen? What's the advice you give? Like, if you had to talk about things that are indispensable part of your mixes in marketing, or secret tricks to the trade that you'd advocate for, what are some things would you put out there for firms that are trying to get to where you are? And you might think you have other legs up on your own journey, but you've come from somewhere. What would you be telling people? Where do you start? What tools do you? I'm curious to see if you have a particular piece of advice that jumps to your mind. Terry, do you want to take that one first?
Oh my gosh, why'd you start with me?
Because I know you have probably 1,000 pieces of
I want
advice.
to come up with something good because it's so many things. Gosh. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, let me redirect on this front, because I think one of the things that's always challenging for firms, like, well, I have so much I want to get done. What are like the non-negotiables, right? Like, what are we starting with where you say, okay, I have an operation I'm trying to promote in 2025. What are the non-negotiables? It doesn't have to be one thing, but like, think about the things that are critical for a firm that says, I'm here at $1 billion. I want to get to 5 billion or 500 million to get to 2 billion. Like, what are some of those non-negotiables that Prime is invested in already, or you're aspiring to do more with, right? Like, maybe take it that way.
Okay. So I'm going to try to answer this question. I think that what we do is we start with the end. What is it that we want to achieve? And then we back up from there, right? So if you want to bring on another billion in AUM this year, what does that mean? How many conversations do you need to have? How many appointments do you need to have? And then from there, it's like, how many people do I have to have in the pipeline? How do I get more people in the pipeline? Like how many does that top level number need to be? And when you start to back up from that end point all the way to the top, you start to recognize that, oh my gosh, if I need $1 billion in AUM this year, that means I need probably, 100 appointments a month, and back up from there, because how many of those appointments are going to convert? And when you get all the way to the top of the funnel, you start to recognize that the impressions and the exposure that you need to have is so huge that then you can start to say, all right, what does my content strategy need to be? What channels do I need to show up in? What does my investment in marketing need to be to get to that billion? So I really do think that starting with the end is a really important thing. Otherwise, you're just kind of like shooting in the dark, hoping that you get there. What's the phrase? I'm not going to say it right. A dream without a plan is just a wish. I did it. So just make sure that you know where you want to end up, and then put a plan together to get there. In terms of tools, the thing if I had to point to the tools that I could not live without, there's two. For us, HubSpot is the system that we use for all of our marketing. There are lots of different types of HubSpot tools, but HubSpot's the one that we really love. Plus, they have this huge knowledge base. Like, if you had a question about marketing, type into the Google machine HubSpot and your question, and they are going to have a white paper or a blog post or some sort of guide. They're just a really great partner in that way. The other thing that we cannot live without, because we do have a relatively small team comparatively to the number of advisors that we're serving, is that we have a project management system that is we live and die by. Every project that we have flows through there. Every communication, we can @mention each other, tasks are assigned, they have due dates. The only way that we can deliver on the projects that we have and do it in a way that's proactive is using a project management system so that everything is structured and clearly articulated. And then here's the great thing about both of those systems, you got a little CYA in there. If something happens and an advisor comes in hot and they're like, I told you that I wanted blah, 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 we can go back into our system and say, actually, the last communication that we had was X. We were waiting on this from you. We've put the project on hold because we didn't get what we needed. Having that kind of structure has been really important for us, just to make sure that everything is clear and everything that we're working on is tracked.
So building that chassis for your marketing and making sure you can keep it on, that's awesome. So Crystal, you had a chance to think about your response here. I'm eager.
I feel bad that Terra had a chance to think about it because what she said actually sparked something for me.
Oh, good. Good.
It seems a bit unfair, but
That's the goal. That's the goal.
So we do use HubSpot as well, but what you sort of sparked for me was integration, the term integration. Everything integrates from data to people. So what I mean by that is not only do we use HubSpot, but HubSpot has to talk to Salesforce. Every person who enters our system, HubSpot and Salesforce are synced, and they get a score as a lead. We are enriching them with data from an AI prospecting platform. So we see what asset range they are, where they're sitting, any life events that they've recently had, so that we can then scale the nurture. So integration happens there. Integration also happens within the team. Tara's spot on. We do have a smaller team based on the amount of advisors that we are serving. And so I rely heavily on my agency support. But your agency is as good as your internal person. And I think a lot of people really underestimate how much work is required, even when you do have an agency. They are not integrated into your business. So they still rely on you to provide them with that intelligence. So not only do we have a PR firm and a digital advertising firm, but those firms speak to each other. We keep them aligned on what is happening at all times. What is content doing? What is media buying doing? And keeping them integrated as well. The story is then integrated. The marketing is then integrated. Everything is integrated, telling the same story. And then once that prospect gets in, the other thing that, Terra, that you made me think about was scalability. It's not just about reaching them, but once they have gotten inside, it is also about being able to deliver on the promise that you have made. And in order to do that, you have to be able to have an enterprise scalable solution that you are offering. And so once inside, how are you integrating all of your systems and your processes so that you are also providing the same promise that you said at the top of funnel? Because that is how you create brand loyalty. That is how you create referrals. And it all works in a system together.
Yeah.
Well, and I love the fact that you're talking about the system and the apparatus needed to get things done, because a lot of people get excited by the sizzle out there. Oh, we have a great awards program. We've got a great PR program. We got this great content, great video. The underpinnings to make it real, be able to put it to work. It's that system, the chat, whether you're using HubSpot or whatever it might be. And so it's so important. I'm glad you hit on that. Not that we don't advocate for some of the things I just talked about, but we just know that the underpinnings have to be there to really mobilizing exactly the value out of it.
Yeah.
Let me just take a step aside for a second, because part of the reason why I wanted the two of you on together is that both of you are at firms that have a legacy of having companion firms working alongside the wealth management business. And that presents a very unique marketing opportunity, sometimes a challenge, right? If I was introduced to SignatureFD because 25 years ago I was a client of Fraser Dieter CPA, right? I come in, I'm thinking, well, do they do wealth? Or if I have my retirement plan at Prime, and on and on, right? And so I'd love for you both to address, and Crystal, you're going to go first here, I'll give you a little heads up, but how do you maximize that? Are there any challenges of having what I would call a sibling firm in the market? How do you create your own legacy for the wealth offering when knowing so much people are trying to find the exact right fit? Can I get a glimpse of how that's worked in your world?
Yeah. Well, strategic partners is actually a major leg of our growth stool. We do see it as a piece of how we are growing. Fraser and Dieter is one. We also have others as well. And so I think the way to leverage that the best is the same as you're doing from a community perspective. And so we do work with our advisors. We have a team that is dedicated to nurturing those relationships one-to-one and at scale. We have corporate messaging that goes out to those people at the corporate level, but also holding events and hosting things on their site as well as our site. And just constantly treating those relationships as partnerships that, again, just like any other COI deserves to be nurtured, any other lead deserves to be nurtured. It's just a B2B strategy versus a B2C strategy.
And then Terra, how does it work for you with Prime?
Yeah, so we went through a rebrand in 2024, specifically because of this. I think the entities that we had that were serving different audiences made sense when they were created. And then as Prime Capital Investment Advisors grew, and then I came in and I was like, well, why do they have that email address and they have that email address, and don't they all work for Prime Capital Investment Advisors? So I started just asking questions because I wanted clarity on how everything was structured. And what became kind of obvious to me and the other people on my team was that if we want to tell a better story, and if we want people to really understand that not only do we offer wealth management services, but we work with plan sponsors, we work with plan participants, we really are part of the entire spectrum of financial service. We felt that it was really important for us all to be under one brand umbrella. And so we went through the process. It was not pretty. It was very challenging, but we did have a really great brand partner who shepherded us through that process. But really being all part of Prime Capital Financial, under which we have retirement, wealth, and wellness, has really helped us tell a more cohesive story, so that when our retirement plan advisors are going in and having conversations with plan participants, and those plan participants need wealth services, it's easy for our advisors to say, I'm here as your retirement plan advisor, but we also have this wealth division, and I can get you in touch with my colleague. He works with Prime Capital Wealth, and I'll be part of the process the whole way. It's just a more cohesive story for people when they're having conversations. Because look, I don't think anybody would disagree that our industry is kind of hard for people to understand. Like, what's the difference between, as a average, I call it like Jane and Joe investor on the street, they don't know the difference between a broker dealer and an RIA and a bank and, a record keeper. Like, they all just think that they're all the same. They're all playing in the same sandbox. So we're all the same entity. So it's already confusing enough. And so what we really wanted to do was make it even simpler for people to understand how we can help them, because that's all they care about. Mm-hmm. How can we help you solve your financial challenges? And to understand that we can do that not only through your retirement plan, but also if you want to build a trust or an estate plan or a financial plan or whatever, and need some help with tax strategies, we can do that. We address the whole spectrum for you.
I do think there's something to be said about partnerships that are not just custodial. And so part of our strategic growth funnels are at the top funnel. There's these partnerships with specific community-based organizations that allow us to seed into the members of those organizations. So we can invite them to events. We can have crafted events with those people. So there's partnerships that can take on varying looks. And I do think that it's important for organizations to look into those types of partnerships, because, those are driven in a different way and provide a different type of organic growth. And so it's, this is again where you want to have an integrated system that is encompassing all types of those partnerships.
Agreed.
So we're getting close to the end of our time together, and a couple of questions I want to sneak in here. So I think Terra knows I was probably going to come back to the AI question.
Yeah.
There are AI tools out there. There's AI Identify, there's Catchlight on one side, there's obviously tools like ChatGPT. Where does that fit in terms of mobilizing your marketing? Are you fans? Terra, I think you think it's some of the applications are overrated based upon your notes to me earlier. What does it fit in the mix? Because marketers all over the place, communicators, content users, trying to figure out, should this be part of my mix? How do I use it? What's going on with your shop, Crystal? Like, what are you doing with AI tools in general, and what's your view on that?
Yeah. So Terra, I don't know what your opinion is, but I am a fan. I am.
I think we're probably very much aligned. It sounds like I'm not. Go for it.
I am a huge fan. So yes, we actually do use Catchlight. I know there's many options out there, but we do use it. They actually recently did an update that the enrichment happens within seconds, which has been really, really cool. So We do use that in order to qualify our leads, at least at a high level, before we make any one-to-one contact with them. And then we are also testing out a white labeled chat right now that I am super into. My husband and I are marveling over it all the time. I actually, when we first got it, I was one of the first to want to test it out within our organization. And so I uploaded our plan and I said, tell me where I'm wrong. And it was just super enlightening to see how it would analyze the PDF and think, and it has become my partner in crime. So I think that people are right now using it more for, writing emails and things of that nature, which is great. And it can do that. And I do think when you're looking at how can it help, it can be used, in my opinion, as something that can take on the things that you don't want to do. So you have more time to do things that you do. This is a relationship-driven business. Let's be out there making relationships and not writing emails. But I also think it can play a wonderful partner around just thinking and helping you sort of elevate and elevate how you're thinking of something, especially from a marketing perspective. If you can write the right prompts, it can give you some pretty powerful thoughts. But prompts do matter, and that's why the people part still matters. As much as people think that we're going to just simply be erased, the prompts matter. I can tell when somebody has used chat and has used a pretty bad prompt.
Yeah. Agreed. Yes. So I'll just jump in. I am an AI advocate, just so you know. I completely agree with everything Crystal just said. I think that there's an opportunity for data enrichment. I think that Crystal's team's probably a couple of steps ahead of ours, but we do have conversations underway around how these tools that we do have access to can help us with the qualifying of opportunities and understanding who they are. And I love that idea of like, what are some of those transition events that have occurred in their life so that we know how to talk to them. This is not new in terms of marketing, right? You want to speak to the people, meet them where they are, speak specifically to what their needs are. Like, the more personalized that you can get, the more likely you are to catch somebody and get them into your funnel and pull them down. So I think that's all great stuff. ChatGPT, also something that is really important, because exactly what Crystal said, that I don't want to spend a half hour trying to craft this message and make sure that I have it written. Mm-hmm. When I can drop it in and give it the right kind of prompt, and I'll usually use words like sophisticated, bold, engaging, like making sure that I'm putting these qualifiers around what I'm trying to do. I get some really great stuff back. We just recently launched a magazine for our company that it's my little baby. I'm so in love with it.
That's so awesome.
Pretty. It's a beautiful little, it's cute. It's
my God, you gotta send it. You gotta send it to me. I want to see it. That's awesome.
It's adorable. And it's a hard copy. So it's like a tactile experience, which I love. But what I did was I interviewed all of the people who were going to be featured in our publication, and I recorded the interview. So we just did a Google Meet. I asked them if it was okay if I recorded them. It was just for me and my notes. So I wasn't writing or typing. I was just having a conversation. And so I recorded that and then added that recording and the transcript to ChatGPT, gave it a very detailed and robust prompt, and then said, give me that article. And I would get a really great starting place. So it wasn't final.
Yeah.
And I had to, reference check and all the stuff that you need to do as a human, but it accelerated the work by hours that it would have taken me so much longer to get to the point where I had something down on paper. The beauty of using my transcript and my recording is that it wrote it in my voice, or was more in my voice than it would have been otherwise. So it was a little bit of a test. I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out. But after my first interview, when I dropped it in and saw what it was able to spit out at me, I was like, this is the way.
Yeah. Our platform, I was able to put my LinkedIn profile in the back end. So it talks and thinks as if it has my experience.
Well,
I mean,
so
it's just fascinating,
It is
honestly.
fascinating. Yeah.
and there's
Yeah.
so many ways to do that. And what you're talking about here is really important. When people think about how to maximize these tools, and whether you're using Canva to enhance your, you mentioned that, Crystal, in your notes, that it's an enabler to get from point A to point B for busy marketers. In a lot of ways, these tools are enablers. And I think if you already have a sense of purpose, a sense of creativity, an idea of how you want to position and connect, these tools are going to enable you. And then one of the things, for people that are already adept and have intellectual curiosity, we found that like you can actually create tools for yourself within these things that go to the next level. You talk about Crystal being able to speak from your voice, or Terra the same way, and we built a custom GPT here to help specifically achieve that. So he's like, okay, well, we got 6 different portfolio managers at this investment company, or these 5 wealth advisors, whatever it might be. How do we make sure they map up? And for clients that are really concerned about that, we can walk them through using this tool. So he's like, okay, yeah, this does sound like me. So when you're ghostwriting for me, it short circuits the process on an ongoing basis. And that's just one mechanism, right? And so a big part of what we think of as marketers is like, how can we achieve the sprawling mandates and asks of us with maybe a limited headcount and with the tools that are at our disposal? And I think so. You have to look at things like AI. You have to look at things like Canva that you meant, like, and use those to your advantage. Which brings me to my last question. You are forebearers, front runners, standard bearers, groundbreakers in terms of being the first C-level execs at your firm. There isn't a long pedigree for firms that are out there trying to grow their marketing talent pool. Like there's people don't grow up and say, hey, I want to do PR for insurance companies. I want to do marketing for a bank. Like most people are thinking they want to do that for Taylor Swift or for the Kansas City Royals or the Yankees, right? That's not what they're thinking. So how do we solve this talent gap industry-wide? Like how do we find the next Terras and next Crystals to come up who want to be impassioned by marketing, want to know the financial services space and be able to put those knowledge sets and disciplines together? Like what are your big ideas for that?
This stuff.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think if you could tell the story of the story that you're really telling, if that makes any sense. And what I mean by that is I certainly didn't grow up wanting to be this. But how I got into marketing in general and PR in general was I really love writing. That's all I felt. I really love writing. I love to tell stories. I'm interested in that. How do I do that? Oh, okay. I'll go into PR, I guess. I'll go into marketing. That's kind of how I got here. But how I got into this specific industry was sort of happenstance. I happened to be part of an organization that went public. I spearheaded out on the comm strategy for that. That got me some attention, which got me into touch with this. But what I started to realize in this industry was it's not stoic. It's actually really emotionally driven. It's really predicated off of how you're raised, how your parents talk to you about money, fears. I mean, it's such an interesting, intricately webbed industry. And I think if we can talk about that more, it starts to surpass this Taylor Swift PR type of thing. And I can say that because I actually did entertainment PR in my college years. So I can tell you fundamentally, this is way more interesting.
Well,
I completely agree. I just jumping in, it is a highly emotional kind of a topic. And I will often say that people think of the financial advisors still to this day as like the Gordon Gekko, slick back hair, greed is good dude. And my personal experience has not been that. The people who I work with genuinely care about their clients, and they genuinely want more people who think that they don't have enough money or make enough money for a financial advisor to understand that no, you should be here.
Yeah.
You should work with us. And, that maybe what you think of as a small nest egg can be more if you work with a financial advisor. Like studies show it. So I think being able to tell those, again, going back to storytelling, just telling those stories, I think being on platforms like this, where you have dynamic people showing that they can be very excited about the work that they're doing in financial services. I also think having organizations that have put on their big kid pants and have said marketing should be C-level. We should have an emphasis on it. And by the way, get creative. We don't want to sound or look like the other people down the street.
Yes.
You know, there's only so many times that you can say your trusted advisor, blah, blah, blah. There's to get into deeper storytelling. So really having the opportunity to have creativity in the things that you're doing. I've been very lucky that even from the jump, the first organization that I was at when I entered this industry over a decade ago was very much interested in being creative. And so I was able, when it was time for me to hire somebody, I actually hired somebody that had never worked in financial services before. And she was the best graphic designer I've ever worked with. I have probably another really same like graphic designer who I work with now, who is just, he did my magazine. I've worked on him with previous magazines. Like he is just a genius. So I feel like you can recruit people who are really talented when you stop trying to find people who have worked in financial services and instead think about what are the marketing fundamentals that I need to have a successful team to help grow this organization and tell a story that's compelling. Because you don't have to be from this industry to do that. And
Absolutely.
I actually think having
it's better
experience
if you're not.
under it, yeah. And I say this again, I feel like I've repeated myself. I say this all the time to our advisors and people who ask these kinds of questions. I think it's an advantage on many fronts, not on all, but many fronts, that my team didn't originate from financial services, because when we see something come across our desks, we're asking more questions.
Absolutely.
What does this mean? Will the public understand it? We just did a video a few weeks ago after the tariff announcements where we had our portfolio manager and our deputy chief investment officer, and I got to interview the two of them on what are tariffs, how have they been used historically, what does this announcement mean, all of that sort of stuff. And at one point, the portfolio manager said, CPI and and went through the whole thing. And I said, let's take a step back, because I know that CPI stands for Consumer Price Index, but can you explain how that works for me? Because I want people to feel like they're keeping up in the conversation. This is part of where I feel like our industry has really, we are evolving, that we need to stop thinking that our jargon and acronyms and that everybody knows those things. Like, take a step back and help people understand what we're talking about so that we can all participate in this conversation. It helps people take ownership of their own financial success when they understand what the conversation is about. And so I feel like, and it looks like Crystal agrees and sounds like Crystal agrees, that when you come from outside the industry, you're going to ask more questions just because you're trying to understand. And when you do that, you're going to write differently. You're going to position things differently so that more people understand. And our company, and I'm sure that Crystal's company, is really focused on financial literacy. We think that there's a real gap in financial literacy in this country, and we need to do more to help people understand just the fundamentals around it. And so the more that we can put out there that's really about understanding what we're talking about and not talking down to people. I don't want to make the mistake of saying that we're dumbing things down. That's not it. It's just getting away from jargon and explaining exactly what it is that we're talking about in real layman's terms so that everybody understands.
Make it approachable.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is it. This is your time for what I call the parting shot. If you can leave our listeners with anything about marketing, about what your firm is up to, about yourself, that you think would really be a strong takeaway when you think about what's next in the world of marketing, how to make a difference in your organization in the financial services sphere when you're talking about growing and communicating and marketing your business. Love to hear your parting shot. And Crystal, your shot first.
All right. I will say, I do think that more organizations are starting to put more marketing people at the table. And so a couple of things to think about if you are in the position that Terra and I have been in, where you're building a marketing department, is start by listening. That is, you're coming into organizations that have thrived without you. And so there's something to be said about paralleling that success and not cannibalizing it. So start by listening.
Perfect. Terra?
That's a yes, and
Love it.
because I love that. Look, it's a tale as old as time in terms of marketers or people who have been interacting on the internet since, Yahoo chat days. Be authentic, show up authentically. And I mean that not just in the way that you write or the videos you produce or any of the content. It's the meetings that you're sitting in. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And I would just say that this industry, it's not exclusive. We need to have the narrative be around being inclusive. This is a place where everybody belongs. Doesn't matter what your background is. And I think if you are considering, I'm now talking to people who are like the recruitment part. If you want to be in marketing, PR, like the creative part of this industry, do not let it intimidate you.
Yes.
Find an organization, find a mentor, and because we want more of these people who aren't from financial services, haven't grown up in this industry, to bring all the smart things that you've learned in your industry to financial services.
Well, I can't say enough to thank you both. This conversation could have gone on for a lot longer than it already has. I think the two of you bring a lot of energy, ideas. If people are listening and tuning in and thinking about their own marketing, I'm sure they can feel like the two of you are resources.
Yes.
Thank you so much for taking the time being part of the marketing matchup. Crystal Mathis, CMO of SignatureFD, and Terra McBride, Chief Marketing Officer at Prime Financial. Thank you both. Awesome stuff, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Marketing Matchup, a production of Gregory. If you like what you heard, please listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.